Why is it doing that? Everybody, it's me, the Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl. It is Monday night, and this is Twisted Stitches. I hope you all had an amazing week, and I hope that I am live because I don't see anybody in here.
I see the live button.
You see the live button?
I do.
This is what happened. Oh, there's Rita. Hi, Rita Johnson Cotterman. Thank you. At least we know we made it through. Hey, Michelle, how are you? Boy, oh boy, I just love it when Paul's not around. Up there he is. Speak of the devil.
It's the Nitty Gritty Yarn Boy.
It's the Nitty Gritty Yarn Boy. He's in his hotel room. Yeah, give a wave, Paul, if you want me to bring you on camera. But hi, Jillian and Anne-Marie Romansky. Hi there, Kristen Parkhurst. I hope you're doing well with your homework. Deb Massis joining us. Debbie Andretta is here. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. It's nice to see everybody. I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope that you are staying dry today. I know it has been it's been a soaker here. I just seem to get the dogs out and then back in just before the rain comes down. But we're getting through it. Hey, Darren, how are you? And hi, Donna. I hope you're all doing well. Paul actually got caught in a snowfall today, and a snowfall, a rain shower, a snowfall. Wrong season. I'm trying to read the screen and watch what's going on here. And my husband looks like he's putting together something from IKEA off camera. Hi, Gloria Thies. And you know what? While we're here, yep, it's Monday. Hi, Marianne, Marie Summers, and Robbie McCarthy. It's great to have everybody here. My goodness, you're all just piling right in here. How nice. Piling and filing. What a great time. It's rainy in PA. And Kristen says, we don't have homework this week, just to bring longer needles for color work. Good. I don't think there's any other homework, Kristen. Oh, I know. I think Michelle was going to be sending something to me, and I haven't received it yet. So I don't know. You just get it on Wednesday when you come in, I guess. Unless you hear from me. Hey, Anna, how are you doing? No homework. Okay, Michelle just confirmed, no homework. So we've got some folks here with us today, and I'm so happy that Whitney is joining us again. I feel like you become a little bit of a part of the home of the woodwork and the just the whole persona of Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl lately, and it's so much fun to have you.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Oh, anytime. So I know that you're busy working. You've got lots of things on your needles and lots of stuff in the queue. And we're going to talk about some color work tips today. But before we get started on that, hey, Veronica and Deborah, I want to talk about this.
The lobster sweater.
Mine is coming along. Yay. Let's see if I'm working on that.
Good.
I know. Isn't it fun?
It's so fun. Well, you can see I really like lobsters. We have the lobster claw.
Oh, that's a lobster claw.
It's a lobster claw.
Yeah, you are a fan of the lobster.
So we're kind of into lobsters at our house. But the lobster sweater was an idea that kind of came about after a couple of different sweaters geared towards kids or like non-knitting related items came across my my feed, so to speak. And every time I saw something like that, I was like, oh man, I'd really love to have a sweater for myself. This is something I just really want for me. And I'm inspired a lot by a lot of other textile mediums, whether it be weaving or a needlepoint or a cross stitch or just, and really seasonal, fun, joyful, slightly whimsical projects. they really resonate with me personally. So this idea kind of worked itself out, and it has, come to fruition. I've shown it around a little bit, and then we recently published the pattern, and wow. It has been a little bit of a hit. So,
and that's really funny. You would think that because it's so unique that it would be a really just a little niche market.
Yes.
But it's a pretty big niche.
It is. Well, New England is a pretty big niche.
Do you find that most your orders are coming from that area?
Well, I think most of the knitters are in this area. Although I know that I had a very loyal friend in Texas buy the pattern, and I can't wait for her to knit it up. I think that'll be so fun, and I also hope that means maybe she's planning a trip up here. That would be so great, because I would love to visit with her. But yeah, it's great, and I do have a fairly loyal following from teaching color work over the years, and maybe some of the pattern sales have come from that. But I think it's really landing well in markets like Niantic and markets like all the great little beachy coves along the rocky shores as you travel along the Atlantic coast.
That's great. That's really great. Let me catch up on some of these comments here. So Deb Massa, yes, I have gotten pretty far on that sweater. I'm determined. I don't know. I can't tell you the last time that I parked my butt and did nothing but knit. But today was one of those days. And the dogs, one sat on my lap, one sat at my feet. They were excellent puppies. And so I got to get a lot done today. So I am determined to get that done. Rita Johnson Cotterman is saying, how cute. Hi, Oriana. It's great to have you. And what a snappy sweater, Maria Brand says. Hi, Nancy Robertson. Bev Reiser and Veronica New. I finally made it without falling asleep. And hey there, Dina Justice. You're looking pretty cool there today in that new top that you just knitted. One of Jody's patterns, looking really good. Thank you. And Paul said sweater weather from the Canadian border. And so Veronica's asking if I can show this again. Yes. So here it is. That's one sleeve. So this sleeve is John. You can see I left the needles on because I'm never sure if my sleeves are long enough or too long. So I left that on, and I'm deciding if I'm going to, I think I've got the sweater long enough. Whitney had some great ideas. She had mentioned, thank you, Veronica. You had mentioned to me to grab a sweatshirt because it's supposed to be a nice loose fitting sweater. Grab a sweatshirt and measure it from the sweatshirt. And that was very, very helpful. And so the body, I love the way the body fits. And I think the length is right. But the sweatshirts are a little bit too long for me. So I came up a couple of inches from where that sweatshirt might have landed. But the sleeves are cool. I'm still deciding if I want to put a wider ribbing on the bottom. I don't know because the sleeves have a wider rib.
They do, and that's supposed to mimic that sort of sweatshirt, like easy wear sleeve. What that longer cuff does is it sits right above right on your natural wrist, and it pushes this. Well, here we go. It pushes the sleeve a little bit to allow it to blouse. You want a little bit of extra room there.
Okay, cool. Well, I can't wait to finish it. Kristen Parkhurst is saying, beautiful job. Hi, Renee Richardson. Good to see you. Hey, Jody. Jody's on with us too. And sitting. Hi, Whitney. I miss chatting to you. I hope to see you soon. And so, yes, you like longer cuffs at the bottom, Beverly. Jody, I don't know if you got my message. I sent Jody a message. I'm sorry to cut into your time, Whitney. I've got to say, last year when Jody came out to the show, he brought these most delicious Turkish treats. They're these little jelly type candies, just so good. And so I'm watching. If anyone has Netflix and you have not seen The Beauty Queen of Jerusalem, watch it. It is amazing. It's an amazing series. But in the show, the family owns a delicatessen and they have those little treats. And every time I see them, I think about Jody. So so Whitney, you're gonna tell us some tips for color work.
All right. So as a lot of times I find that people are slightly intimidated by color work, and I can't fathom that. But I have put together it's 10 top tips, but it's actually going to be 12. So if you want to take notes, you might learn something new. These are my top tips for color work. The first thing is, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because you got to dive right in. The thing about most stranded color work is you're working with 2 colors at any one time. And most of the stitches are always knit. Like once you get past your ribbings, every stitch is going to be a knit. So you're not having to really worry about changing color and cabling or doing a lot of yarn overs. You may have some increases, especially in, or decreases, especially in the stranded yoke knitting that is really popular right now. Right now, the trend is to knit a lot of sweaters from the top down. In traditional, more like Scandinavian or Shetland style stranded color work, you might knit from the bottom up, where when you're knitting from the bottom up, you're going to decrease for most of your shaping versus increase. So that's something to consider. It's pretty easy stitch combination. So take a deep breath and know that every stitch is going to be knit. Also, there are very few absolutes. So this is tip number 2. There are very few absolutes, and there are many styles of knitting, whether it's Portuguese or with a knitting belt, or, using circular needles or long double points, or, any type of knitting that you can come up with. Don't focus on right or wrong. Make sure that you are comfortable. However you knit is a great way to knit, as long as your stitches are seated correctly on the needles and they're not twisted when you bind off. Beverly, for the lobster sweater, you don't use bobbins for each lobster. They are actually stranded. So in between the lobsters, you do a couple of tacks. And those are just easy ways to catch your floats, to make sure that float is going to stretch across the back of your work and lay flat without causing a lot of disruption. So hold the yarn the way you're comfortable. So there's always conversation in every yarn shop about knitting English or continental. Hold the yarn in your right hand or your left hand, or both hands, or 2 hands, or 2 yarns in one hand, or using a knitting thimble, or any other form of assistance in tensioning. And I think it's important to dive in, and if you knit English and you are really very, very right hand dominant, then just pick up the yarn that you need for each stitch and lay it down when you're done. That's okay. Just do that. You're going to be so proud of the piece of work that you make, that it's okay that not everybody holds 2 yarns in one hand, or 2, one in each hand, but it might be a great opportunity for you to kind of retrain your brain to use both your right and left hand while you're knitting color work. So don't be afraid to try something new. But if you're going to try something new, we're on tip number 3 is always to swatch. If you're going to try a new technique, definitely do it on your swatch, because you want your swatch for a color work project to be made with the yarn and needles in the same manner or method of the sweater. So your swatch needs to be worked in the round. And you need to be working with either a section of the chart from the sweater or something that's in similar scale. So when we talk about scale, we're talking about like repeats of one stitch, like changing color every other stitch, or every 2 stitches, or every 4 stitches. Keep that scale in mind. If you're not going to work from a really large chart to do, say, like a 1 wedge section of the lobster yoke, just make sure you're using that larger scale for your patterning, for testing your needles and your yarn.
So you would actually swatch using both colors in this case.
I did.
Okay.
I did. So in my additional tip, along with swatching as being a place to like try different knitting techniques, swatching is where you can try out different colors. So the original swatch for the lobster sweater was actually the yoke and a part of the stripe section. And I did knit the yoke in a different red and like a sea glass green, and I loved it, but it wasn't what I really had in mind for the sweater that I really wanted to wear. So it was great for me to experiment with that, and I did knit the entire yoke, and then I couldn't pull it out because the lobsters were so cute. So it's somewhere in my knitting paraphernalia, and hopefully I'll have it with me when I come to the shop this weekend. But it's, you know, it's nice to have the swatch to practice on and to look back at, to see, you know, was my gauge really true, and that kind of thing. So with the swatching and playing with color and trying different techniques, it's also a great place to try different types of needles. So we're on to, this is like tip number 3C. try different types of needles. And by that I mean different materials that needles are made of. So try wood needles, metal needles, and bamboo. A bamboo needle can be very different from a birch needle. And even like a plastic or some of the older metal needles that you may have in your collection, give those a try, because depending upon the yarn that you're going to use for color work, and I'm not going to tell you that you have to use 100% non-superwash wool, because it's your life and it's your sweater, so you should use something that you like, but you need to know that you can gauge the outcome of that project. And there are some beautiful projects being brought out on Ravelry that are not using just those traditional 100% wool yarns. You know, you really only need that combination, like the non-superwash 100% wool or 100% animal fiber, if you're planning to steek your sweater. And a steek is just cutting the work to open it up, say working in the round so you have real nice even tension, and then cutting the cardigan front to open it up and make that pull over into a cardigan. So so moving on from types of needles, tip number 4, believe it or not, this is tip number 4. Work with the longest cord that you can for your project if you're working in the round. And you can work color work flat, and I would encourage you to try that, maybe through some swatches, because it's Marie Wallen says to knit color work only in the round is really limiting. And when you do your color work only in the round, you have to forfeit some of that design sensibility if you're not willing to maybe try working sections flat. So it's something to try. I like to design in the round, and I like to knit in the round. So that's what I do. But I encourage, yes.
I have a question. So if you're knitting flat in color work, so then now you're purling.
Yes.
Okay, and so when you're purling, you're stranding your pearls as well.
You are.
Okay.
And in all the research that I've done, in all the practice that I've done, you really want to be holding only one yarn at a time. So you'd want to be purling back with your right hand versus trying to knit a combination.
Right.
If you're holding the yarns in your left hand, you're going to have a harder time purling back in color work with good tension. So it's just something to consider. So it's a great time to play, and it's nice to be able to challenge ourselves and play doing different things. So maybe try a swatch with purling and color work, or reading the chart right and left, and instead of just perpetually from right to left, and then give it a try. It's always exciting. So the longest cord is going to give you the most room, and if you're able to stretch your knitting, I'm looking for something that I have on the needles. Like, I've moved on from a colorwork section here at the bottom of this sweater, but you don't want to, like, this is really for the colorwork section. This is too bunched up. What's going to happen is I'm not going to get even floats if I don't use a larger needle, or if I'm not using a longer, and what I mean is longer, not necessarily larger in the size, millimeter size of the needle. You want to make sure that your stitches are going to lay really naturally on your needle in the section that you're working, because if they're bunched up, you run the risk of pulling your floats too tight.
I learned that.
And yeah, this takes me on to tip number 5. Avoid the bunching. You don't want to have too much bunching. You also don't want to have too much stretching, because knitting is a string of loops, right? And each loop is connected to its neighbor. So if you're over manipulating one of the neighboring stitches, you run the risk of destroying the tension around sections of the sweater or the entire circumference. So you want to be mindful of that. If you're new to color work, I recommend starting with a project that's worked at a little bit larger gauge. So like the sweater that I just showed you, or even like some of these hats. These are patterns that I've designed that I'm going to be releasing at a worsted weight gauge. These are worsted weight projects. So, working something that's simple and geometric, like this doodle hat, this will allow you to get really familiar with the techniques, and it'll work up kind of quickly, and you're not at any extreme for gauge, needle size, yarn size. Hi, Janine. Thank you for that sweet comment.
Some of the comments as they come up, because I don't want to interrupt you while you're mid explanation for things. But we've got some comments here. Jody and Michelle both mentioned that they knit with both hands when they're doing flat work, and they have no issues. Well, and I'm sure that you don't. But we're we're talking tips and techniques. Mostly, these are people who have not done a whole lot of color work, and so. Where everybody learns, and they learn at their own pace. So absolutely, I'm sure that it can be done, and it's great when it works for you. Let's see what else we have here. Lila Foster saying hi, Jody. Hi Pam. Thanks for tuning in. Jody says some people knit and purl with both hands and have no problems. Yes. And so, yeah. And this is not to say that there's only one way. As you mentioned before, there are a lot of different techniques, a lot of different needles, a lot of different ways that we do things. These are Whitney's tips, and we appreciate you sharing them with us. So Nancy Parks, I want to show Nancy Parks's comment. She said, no one ever taught me how to do color work, and you're bringing up so many things to think about. I always thought we carry, etc., was logical and straightforward. The carry was logical and straightforward. It sort of is, but there are so many different ways to do it.
Absolutely. And there's, that's why I always like to preface these conversations and every class that I teach that I'm going to share with you with, with all honesty and earnest what I believe to be true, but I'm not going to tell you what you're doing is wrong, because there are so many different styles and different techniques. And, in all actuality, I've lived in a very small corner of this great wide world of knitting. And, I just want to help other people love it as much as I do. So,
Absolutely.
Dive in and give it a try. We're really
That's
in
right.
on the dive in.
So where are we? Are we at number 5?
Yeah, so we just rounded up number 5. And number 6 was the, worsted weight, try something at 4.5 to 5 stitches to the inch, to give yourself the opportunity to work through a project, without, fighting with like super fine yarn and super small needles and being really frustrated because you're not seeing your project grow. So number 7, I would say hats and cowls like this. This is, I think hats and cowls are fantastic swatches. So they're projects that you can typically work through in just a couple of days. So you're going to give yourself some time to get familiar with your materials. So whether it's the exact pattern that you're swatching for, or maybe it's just something that you feel like is a suitable representative of what you would like to do with a particular yarn, you can give yourself that opportunity to have a finished project by swatching with a functional swatch. It's like a wearable muslin in sewing. So dominant colors is another thing I'd like to talk about and I'll reach for a different project. We talk about dominant colors, the picture that you want to see in your knitting. More than anything, you want to make sure that you keep it consistent, especially amongst in 2-color projects. Like if you always hold the yarn the same way, you'll end up with something that is really beautifully done. But your dominant yarn can affect what appears in the foreground and what appears in the background of your project. So as a beginner, I would say keep your yarns balanced as best you can. And if you're using two different hands, meaning one yarn in your right hand and one yarn in your left, you want to keep that dominant color, or what you want your picture or foreground to develop into, to the left. So
okay, we have another question here. Gina's saying, thank you for your information. Can you explain working color in the round to stop the jogging of the rounds?
So I know exactly what you're talking about, Dina. And it usually shows up a little bit more in striping. There are a couple of different techniques for whether you want to slip this stitch at the beginning of the round when you're joining a new color, or knitting in the row below. I've seen it written a couple different ways. I personally want to knit for, the ease and peace of mind and the joy of knitting. And I just don't let that kind of stuff get me down.
And it's, I'm as you're explaining this, I'm looking at my sweater here, and where I've changed my colors for my, for the stripes in there. And I'm always conscious of that when I first start a project. And I think the more I do it, the better I get at it.
Absolutely. And you can manipulate the placement of, like, in the lobster sweater, for instance, the back of the sweater is the center of the round while you're working the yoke. Right. But then as soon as you separate for the sleeves, you move that beginning of the round to the underarm, so that any striping, any jog that you might have in the stripe would occur at the underarm, which wouldn't be as noticeable, in conversation with someone who's like looking at you wearing your garment in public. that's, you know, and it's, I think in finer yarn, it's not typically as apparent. It can be a little bit more, those jogs can be more apparent in thicker yarns, but
yeah,
yeah, I'm not the person to ask about that because
well,
I want everybody to have fun.
I get better at it the
Sorry.
more I do it. You know, I just work at it, and for me, it's just kind of tugging on that yarn on the, you know, making sure that my crossover for the two colors is right. And honestly, I can pretty much even out whatever happens to be there in the blocking.
Absolutely.
It's not that big a jog for me anyway.
Right. Right.
I hope that helps, Dina.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I did. There are so many there. Somebody, one of the knitting instructors who I had in the shop one time said, it's not a mistake if you're in love with what you've done. I mean, none of us, I'm not going for a blue ribbon anywhere. I'm knitting
Yeah.
for the joy of knitting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have, I have never wanted to knit for anyone. I just enjoy knitting, and I want to knit for me and for my
Yeah.
shop.
And
And
I, you know,
I guess it all depends on what your goals are.
yes, absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I look at stuff and I just had to turn this a bunch of times to find the jog in this pattern, but can you all see it?
No. But then again, I'm not looking for it.
It's right here. It's in this column of V's.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, from the back of a galloping horse. I think that was some of the best. Choose your personal poison. Joyless jog. Let the jog happen. Or knit flat and sew the seam. Do the personal lesser evil. Excellent advice, Janine. Excellent advice. So when I first started in this industry professionally, I was a yarn shop owner, and I was still very much a novice knitter. I had a customer who was in the same sort of like field of life as I was. We both had little kids, and she was raising sheep and I was running a business, and I was trying to knit a sweater, and I was having the least amount of success knitting that sweater. Like, was not happening for me. And I said, I just don't, like, I don't know why I can't get my head around this. And I put it down, and I came back to it 2 years later, and I looked at that and went, how did I not know? Like, how could I not see it? But I couldn't see it at that, you know, just at that point in my knitting life, I couldn't see what I couldn't see. So, but that particular person, Jen, she shared with me, you know, don't worry over something that somebody's not going to be able to see. It's going to be apparent to you. You can't see it from the back of a galloping horse. And if somebody's standing that close to you that they're going to point out something that they don't think is just so in your sweater, then it's probably okay to punch them in the nose.
Okay, tip number 7. It's okay to punch somebody in the nose if they insult your work.
They don't like your knitting, you punch them in the nose. So let's see. And then tip number 8, Paula, you just made some comments about this. This is about blocking. So this is a 2-part tip. So for what that's worth, it's like 8 and 9, and we really have gone through all 12 tips on my 10-tip list. The blocking is really important. I recommend wet blocking your colorwork knitting because you want to even out all those floats. Let's see if I can show you something with really pretty floats. This is a pattern I'm going to be releasing later this week, but look, those really nice even floats. And it doesn't look this way until after you block it. Maybe it looks kind of that way, but you can really even out your work and set those stitches. I think that's That's the big part. You get your yarn to relax and become a fabric versus being a series of stitches. And always lukewarm water. And I recommend, and this is a very important tip in my mind, always to use a wool wash, and really and truly a wool wash, because the last thing you want to do is use something that could change the pH of the water, or create a scenario where you're making a potential bleed situation, like having one color bleed onto another, worse. So people will add things like white vinegar to the wash, and that's totally at your discretion. But I have found that even in really complicated color work patterns with a lot of color difference, maybe like red, using red, I think it's really important to use a nice wool wash, because it just helps things not readhere. So you may notice that you're pulling your work out of water that's got a little dye in it. I think blues and reds are typically the worst. But I've noticed with wool wash that I don't ever have anything like readhere.
Yep.
So
I got a couple of comments that came through here that I want to share with you. Beverly Reiser had put up, before you mentioned about wet blocking, she said she steam blocks her work and it relaxes the fibers and the projects keep their shape forever. Then we also had Kristen Parkhurst said, thank you for the kind advice to be kind to ourselves as we learn and grow. Yeah, unless you have aspirations to be a professional, you're all learning, and and I don't know that there's anyone in life, if we ever stop learning things, I think our life is done. There's always something to learn. Okay. And Maria Branton says we have to choose grace for ourselves sometimes, and we learn from our mistakes. And that's one of the things that I want to share with people, is that the more you do things, the better you'll get at it. When I was knitting this sweater, Michelle was in the shop one day, and I asked her, how's the white doing? She said, no, how's the red doing? I don't remember which one it was, but she said, your stitches are too tight on the needle. And just that one thing that she mentioned, she said, spread the stitches apart. And that's what you were saying before, is use the longest wire you possibly can. And that helped me so much. Just that little tip made a big difference in the way I looked at my sweater from that point on, all the color work on it. So that was great advice. Rita said, this one, I want you to see this one, Whitney. It says, I finally blocked my doodle sweater and I love it so much. I wear it a lot. Yay. Yay. You are going to love it once after it's blocked. Yep. There's Whitney's.
I'm bringing this one with me this weekend.
Cool.
I just got it back.
I'm looking forward to seeing it in person, live and in person.
Yes. So you all got a tiny preview of some of the projects I'm going to be sharing at the trunk show on Saturday at the shop. So I hope that some of you, if you're local, are able to come and join us. I do have 2 more tips. These are like bonus tips. These are not written down, but I feel like I have to. No, Eucalyptus is a brand of wool wash, and it's one that I use. I typically go between Eucalyptus and Soak, depending upon what my LYS of the day has when I need it. I'm in yarn shops just about every day. So when I need wool wash, it just depends on where I am. Pam, I can't wait to see you too this weekend. It's going to be such a fantastic time. How lucky are we as knitters that we get to be involved with someone as fantastic as Paulette and have a shop like Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl that is helping us all grow and experience new things as knitters.
So you had 2 more tips.
Yes. Okay. So blocking, I want to circle back to that real quick. Blocking is really important, and don't be afraid to block aggressively. Think about it. There are sock blockers, mitten blockers, and sweater blockers, and colorwork knitters have been using these particular tools for years and years and years, like hundreds of years, in multiple cultures all over the world. So blocking aggressively is not wrong. So, you don't have to do it, but know that you're, when using 100% wool in your colorwork, it's agreeable to do that. And especially, certain wools like Shetland wool and, those British breeds that are designed for, or really have specific qualities for colorwork, heritage colorwork knitting. Know that aggressive blocking is part of the plan. And picking colors for your colorwork, I showed you guys a lot of high contrast projects. Like these are really high contrast where you have a dark and a light. If you're going to play with colors that are a little bit closer together, I would recommend laying the yarn out and using your phone and the photograph option, the camera, slide all the way to the black and white option and look at your contrast in tone and color through that filter. It can help you from making a tonal mistake while picking colors, and that kind of it all really dovetails together. That can also be kind of sussed out while you're swatching. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, Whitney, thank you. Those were great tips. It was lots of fun chatting with you, and we had lots of great comments from everybody in the audience. And and I do appreciate all the feedback and all the input from you, from the audience. This is what makes us different than those podcasts that are out there. It's really important for us to have interaction with the folks who we're talking with, and I really do find it very helpful to see what you all are experiencing in the moment while we're doing this. So thank you all for your comments and your thoughts. And we are going to go over to the sharing bucket. Let me just run over there real quick, and I'm going to pull a name out of the sharing bucket. I should have brought it around.
Throw up any other comments or questions that you all may have, and we'll try and get those answered. If not during the live, we'll come back to them. I'll come back to them on Facebook and try and share some more information.
Oh, sure. No, thank you. I appreciate that. And don't forget, folks, Whitney will be here on Saturday from 10 to 4. She's got more tips up her sleeve. So she's going to be doing 2 sessions during the hours that she's here. We'll do one I think I said we were going to do one at 11 and one at 2, something like that, spreading them throughout the day so that if folks come in earlier in the day, they'll get to share there, and then we'll have another one later on in the day. Jan Stevens says, I'm sorry I'll miss you this weekend, but I can't wait to make the lobster sweater. Oh, it's Poppy. Hi, Poppy.
Poppy needed to make an appearance, guys. She was barking.
That's okay. No problem. No problem. So yes, we will see you on Saturday. We've got Jody coming on Sunday. We're going to back up and go in the reverse now on Friday. We have Roseanne Fleischauer here, and on Thursday, Andra Assars, and she's got a great trunk show as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. And our winner today is, let me do it that way, Kelly Kohlhofer.
Yay, Kelly!
Thank you so much for joining us. I am racking up all these sharing prizes to send out this week. We've got so many things going on. We still have our fundraiser here. Renee, thank you for your for contributing to that. I put your tickets in, and so we are just all ready for a great weekend. We can't wait to see everybody. Whitney, thank you again so much for being with us.
Well, thank you.
We will see you all very soon. Let's see if I can get this done right here. My husband thinks I don't really need his help when I always do. And honey, thanks for sitting in the background there. We love you. We'll see you later. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.